On this episode of TLC Connections, we sit down with Captain Marc Pasquarella of SEPTA Police to discuss a critical yet often overlooked topic, officer wellness. From launching the crisis response team to advocating for mental health support, Captain Pasquarella shares how SEPTA Police is working to change the culture around emotional well-being in law enforcement. He also opens up about his own journey, the impact of effective leadership, and why taking care of officers ultimately strengthens the communities they serve. We hope you enjoy the episode.
Welcome to TLC Connections, the podcast where educators, counselors, coaches, and community leaders come together to inspire change, one connection at a time.
Welcome to TLC Connections podcast. My name's Julie Knutson. I'm the Director of Development here, and I'm really excited and honored and privileged to have Captain Pasquarella from SEPTA Police Department here with us. Just a little background, I got to meet Captain Pasquarella when we proposed doing trauma-informed de-escalation training for some of his officers, and through conversations, I just could tell immediately how passionate and supportive that Captain is for his officers. So welcome, Captain Pasquarella.
Thank you for having me.
And if you could just tell me a little bit about yourself and how you got into the role that you're at with SEPTA.
So I started in Ocean City, New Jersey. During the summer, they hire an influx of cops to deal with, all the vacationers and all that. So I did that. I actually lived down there because I was trying to get hired by Ocean City. And in New Jersey, most towns, you have to live in the town to get hired by them. And then I'd also applied to SEPTA. And just as the summer season was ending, I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do. Because it's a seasonal job, so it ends in August. And I actually had a job set up in a casino down in Atlantic City doing security. And then SEPTA called me and saved me from that. So, and that was 2010. So I've been with them ever since. So this will be my 15th year. I started out in patrol. And then I was in a special unit. At the time, it was called Team 1. We did a lot of plainclothes work. And then I hurt my shoulder boxing, and so I had to get surgery, so I was out for a little bit, but I had taken the promotional test for sergeant just before that. And then, so I got promoted, and I was a sergeant up in the radio room. Then I was in internal affairs, and I got promoted again to lieutenant. Was doing that for about 5 years in patrol, and then got promoted to captain last week. So
it's really exciting. Glad to be able to celebrate with you here today.
Thank you. Yeah.
I know you have so many responsibilities, but I could tell, I really feel like officer wellness, that's what I want to talk about today, is something that you seem to care about, that you focus on, and wanting to look at how we can support officers. And just today on the news coming in, hearing that there was an awful accident on the train. There was a death, and I'm leaving for work and knowing I'm going to be meeting with you, that SEPTA is going to be now investigating this death on the trains and the impact that must have on officers. And so what has led you to kind of really want to be committed to officer wellness, to focus on that?
Mental health has always been a big thing for me. I think it's super important to take care of yourself, not only physically, but mentally. Just seeing, because when I started, the mental health aspect of law enforcement was kind of ignored. It was just just deal with it, rub some dirt on it and get back out there. And you could see just from the other officers and just the years going by, you could see how it affects them, but they don't want to say anything because the I guess the machoism of policing is I can't say anything. People think I'm weak. So I really wanted to try and change that perspective on law enforcement and within our department. So our previous chief kind of let me start this program. We call it the crisis response team. So it started with him, and then our new chief is also really super supportive of it. And so, it's I've seen a huge a huge difference in the officers. And I think now that we're hiring younger officers, they're more accepting to getting help. And even the older ones are starting to see, like, at first they're like, I'm not going to do that. But then when they see how, everyone talks about our unit, we get officers that come to the members to talk about things. And, I've actually had a couple officers call me and say, like, how helpful it's been and how grateful they are for us. And it's, it's exciting to see the impact that we make.
That's amazing. I didn't realize even like you really actually brought the CRT, the crisis response team, took the lead with that.
Yeah.
Just in context, and my experience now working with law enforcement in my role with the DOJ grant, but knowing that officers have higher suicide rates, higher divorce rates, lower, shorter life expectancy, the toll that the job takes on higher divorce. What can you tell me more what the crisis response team is, what it does?
Yeah, so it's a group of officers. I think we're up to 11 now, 10 or 11. I think it's 11, including me. But I kind of just oversee it. But yeah, so anytime there's a critical incident, for example, the incident you just talked about that happened this morning, the train strike, our officers will reach out to our members of the CRT team. Will reach out to any of the officers involved, and just to check in on them, see how they're doing. We'll follow up a couple days later just to make sure that they're okay. If, we tell them we're always available to talk. And then, if we feel or they feel like they need more advanced help, then we can refer them to a specialist. We also, when Amtrak had an officer commit suicide who actually used to be part of our department, we did a debriefing with all of Amtrak officers, in Philadelphia.
Oh, wow.
And we sent a couple of our officers from our CRT team over there, and they did a whole debriefing with them. And I'm pretty sure that's what kind of jump-started Amtrak's. I think they were in the process of creating one, but when they saw how we did it, they were like, they moved forward even quicker on it. Basically anytime, if an officer involves shootings, we had a couple of those recently, kind of same thing. We go, we talk to the officer, make sure they're okay. We follow up with them. It's like, that's kind of how we work. And we're in the process of hopefully getting it where every year we have an officer check in with a professional. And because we think that's really important. Obviously we're not trained.
That's what I was wondering. You're all
not,
fellow officers, that camaraderie. It's interesting, but not licensed.
We're not licensed.
Clinicians
We're trained. We're trained, but we're not licensed
Right.
clinicians. So our hope is to get, have a licensed clinician on board to do this kind of check in with officers once a year. That's right now. That's our number one goal is to get that in place.
So sounds like you've seen over the years, which is beautiful. I'm being a licensed clinician, that officers are more open to talking. And you've made it, I would say, more normalized. Like taking that stigma away. It's heavy duty stuff that. And I think for the average person to know, like for me, just the civilian and not having a lot of contact with law enforcement at all until doing this work to understand the impact, the stress of the job and just the physical and mental toll it takes that I don't think we've always, I can speak for myself, I've always appreciated, the day-to-day stress.
Yeah, it's a lot. And like you said, like you don't kind of realize it till you're in it, how stressful it could be. So
do you find officers will then seek outside support? Is there how is that gapping it when okay, we've done a kind of triaged it, we've had our CRT team deal with it, but we think there needs to be more?
Yeah, well, officers have done. There's a couple that I know of off the top of my head that have we've referred them out to the professional, and they go and talk to the professional. And I was having a conversation with one of them like a year ago, and he was telling me all about it, like how much how helpful it is for him. So it was nice to hear that it's even if it's just one person that's it's great that we're reaching that, and then hopefully like I said, more people will see what this person's doing, or hopefully they'll talk about it, and it just kind of expands from there.
And again, I've seen you do that. It's amazing that you advocate, you speak to it. I know that you're trying to access EAP and make it really streamlined and accessible for your officers.
Yeah, that's the other thing that we're working on is the accessibility of getting, additional help. We want to make it, because if they will come to us saying that they need to talk to someone, we want to be able to just point them right, like, hey, call this person, and boom, it's done. Rather than be like, oh, you could call this person or this person. Like, we don't want them to have to go through even more work to try and find, professional help. We just want to be able to be like, here, call this number, you'll be set up, and you're good to go.
Right. And I know that we continue our conversations to expand a partnership, or how TLC can obviously be a provider, be of support. It was such an honor. I was able to observe the training when you brought your CRT team here for the training.
Yeah.
How did that go? Like, what did your officers think?
It was great. Everyone loved it. It was like, the best part was like how it was catered to what we felt we needed more help with. So, like we had talked about in the training, we wanted more help with like dealing with suicide, like suicidal thoughts, and things like that. So everyone loved it. I loved it. I thought it was great. It was super helpful.
It was a great team. You guys were so engaged. I think,
yeah, and that was the best part about the training. It wasn't like, you just sit there and someone just blows through PowerPoint presentation and that's it. It's over. Like the interactive stuff, like the things we did at the end, that was really fun. I think of the
like
word.
the experiential part of it.
Yeah, well, the exercise we did at the end was like, because you're learning without realizing that you're learning, and it was some of the best training that I've had as far as involving like a crisis response team.
I appreciate that. I appreciate you saying that, because I've observed so many of the trainings that Jared and Nicole do, and it's amazing that you see officers at all different levels, and command staff to frontline, like participating and moving around the room and getting really involved and not knowing, if you said that's what you're going to come and do the training, I think most people would say like, no, thank you.
Yeah. But no, it was fun. Yeah.
Yeah. So can you talk a little bit like what you've seen over the years, starting out when you're like, people didn't talk about it, till what presented that led you to say, to be kind of, in a way, champion for it? We need to do better. I want to support this aspect of policing.
I mean, just being around officers, you could just tell like one, like you could see, like, especially once you're there a couple of years and you around the same officers, you can tell like something like just changes in them. Like their attitude changes. They're not as like happy, but just something changes in their just overall being. And I just got, cause like I've always been going to therapy, and I just was like thinking to myself, like, and learning more and more about mental health, just for myself. And then I was just like, we need to apply this to the job, considering how, like you said earlier, how susceptible we are to suicide and divorce and financial issues. So yeah, it was just kind of like a combination of the two, like my own interest in it and seeing, how I guess how miserable some of the officers can get.
But it's amazing that you share that. Like I didn't know if you would today. We've talked before, and I have such admiration and respect, and because there's still kind of stigma, from layman to the. Yeah, I mean, I think I don't know how one's not in therapy. I'm always talking to somebody myself, but I think in your role as captain and to lead by example and that vulnerability with such strength, I don't know many leaders.
Yeah, I mean. Yeah, I've always been open about it. A lot of, the members on the team, they're always been open about it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think like that's one way to get everyone else to buy into it is because we do have a couple supervisors on our team as well, a couple sergeants. And so like if they're with their officers every day. So if they see them talking openly about it, then, it kind of, the officers will be like, oh, okay.
Right.
Like, this is,
kind
it's
of
okay
normalize
to talk about.
it.
Yeah.
It's a tough job. We're against a lot of stress.
Yeah, it is.
So it's one thing, how are you finding with officer, like across the nation, I think officer retention, and recruitment, how's SEPTA doing with that? Are you always looking for officers? Is there high turnover or?
No, actually it's our officer retention has been like fantastic the last year, 2 years. I think they just released like they did like a whole press release on it just recently, including our drop in crime. But yeah, we just graduated a class. We have another class that's in the academy right now. I think they started like a week ago. Um, we're getting laterals all the time, from different departments. We've actually had a couple officers leave our department and then come back to our department because
So what do you attribute that to? Because that is not my impression is what's happening around the country.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the culture in the department is significantly better than it was, and a lot of that has to do with our new chief, Chief Lawson's done a great job of creating a culture where the officers feel like their work is valued. Like I said, we just had like our biggest drop in Part 1 crime ever in the department from last year to this year. It was 2023 to 2024 was the biggest drop. It was I think the difference between the 2023 and 2024 was 711 Part 1 crimes.
Huh.
It was like a 33% drop in Part 1 crime.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So
what do you attribute that to? Is it also a different way of policing? And
well, but it is because we're basically going back to the basics of policing. And like I said, our chief was really, really hounded on that and supporting the officers in that.
What do you mean by that, the basics of policing?
Chief Lawson, when he took over, he said, no, we're going to be more hands-on with how we police. We're going to be out there strictly enforcing, crimes, especially like theft of service. And so the officers, once they realized that he was going to support them in this, they all started to buy in, because that's why you get into policing, is to help, obviously help people and catch bad guys. So it mostly boils down to the culture of the whole department.
And it speaks to, and the retention is higher and people still want to come over.
Yeah,
that
exactly.
Really says a lot.
Yeah, it does say a lot. Again, about the whole culture department. And I think that's also why people are more receptive to CRT and seeking, getting help, is how good the culture is within the department.
So kind of touched on it a little, but anything else you could add? Are there any best practices or lessons learned from SEPTA's approach to wellness that you think other departments could adapt?
I think just making the team like a crisis response team or a peer support team, however you want to call it, and putting resources into it, like we have. We've sent officers to. There was a conference in Orlando. I think it's the COPS conference, which is like one of the biggest conferences in regards to like peer support. We sent a couple of our officers to that, and because our chief supports the unit and gives us the resources available to do the best job that we can to make sure everyone is okay. And I think it's just you just have to start the unit, and you just have to make sure it has the resources and support to succeed.
Right. Which clearly, like your chief has sent that message. You keep saying loud and clear that and it's evidenced by the retention and given the extra difficulty of being a SEPTA officer on foot in these elements in a tough city.
I think it says a lot. Like I said, it's and I think it's also like a generational thing. I'm kind of like in between I don't know, what is it, millennial and what's the next one? Gen X,
Gen Z,
Z. Is it Z? Yeah. So, and I think when those younger officers see that we care about their well-being, they feel like they're being supported and they want to stay.
And I think, again, you mentioned this about doing some wellness check-ins with a professional, but, what are your hopes or goals for the future of police wellness programs, both within SEPTA or the broader law enforcement?
I mean, like, ultimately, I think, like, each department having their own professional on the payroll would be awesome. That way.
Oh, you're singing my song.
Yeah. The officers wouldn't have to, go through their insurance to set up appointments and worry about the co-pays and all that. Like, I think it would be great if every department had, one or two, depending on the size of the department, that, the officers could go to see anytime they want.
So I guess just starting in closing, how do you personally stay resilient and maintain your own mental health while leading these efforts?
Like I said, I go to therapy myself like every other week. Just try and have hobbies, stay active, go to the gym, um, read. I just try and keep myself busy basically, and not try not to get like sucked into like one thing and go down some rabbit hole where you can't get back out of. So yeah, I mean, it's kind of like, I guess kind of what everyone else, I would think everyone else kind of does is, but I think the biggest difference is, like I said, I go to therapy every other week and I've been doing that for a couple years. Even, and like a lot of people think like, I don't need therapy, but you do. Like you don't really realize it until you go and
Yeah.
you're like, oh my God.
Yeah, start peeling back that onion.
Yeah, exactly. But I think that's another thing that we need to work on is like getting people to realize that, because I think a lot of people don't want to go because they don't want to have to deal with that. It's better to just compartmentalize it and like tuck it in a closet, just shut the door. But
But it'll creep out some way. We
Yeah,
know that,
yeah.
right? Whether through substance abuse or physical issues. Yeah.
yeah.
But it's hard to lean into that stuff. Is there anything you want to share that I didn't ask?
You actually said something that kind of popped into my head. Like when we hire the new recruits after they get out of the academy, I do like a presentation, kind of like a mental health thing. And one of the big things that I preach to them is like, don't take the job home with you. Like when you get home, you're not a cop anymore. Like some people, like their personality is, I'm a cop. I'm like the exact opposite. I don't want anyone to know what I do. Like I don't have anything on my car or like outside my house. Like you would never know that that's what I do. And like it works because no one believes that I'm a cop. But
Yeah.
like which is exactly what I want. Because I feel like if you take the job home, if that's your whole personality, like that's worse for your mental health.
Yeah.
Because you're constantly on it. And there's science behind it. Like you're never really in that middle ground, which is really the healthiest for you. You're either super low or super high. So, if you take your job home with you, you're really never going to get out of that because it takes like 24 to 48 hours for you to get out of that hypervigilance. And so that's something I always preach. Like,
And you're modeling, you can do that and still be promoted, still be in a leadership
Yeah,
role and do
yeah.
it really well.
Yeah.
So I think the best leaders, I always find that if you walk the walk, like I'm watching you, I'm not just listening to you.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. You can't be preaching that and then
Right.
turn around and be doing the same thing you told everyone else not to do. So yeah, that's why I do that. So so they know I'm not just making something up or just being like, oh yeah, go do this. Like, no, I do it too. Like I don't, like I said, I go home. That's it. I'm
Yeah.
not,
You're a dad.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I'm not a cop at home. I'm, whatever I am at home.
Thank you so much. Really, it's always great just meeting with you and speaking with you.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
TLC Connections is supported in part by the Lincoln Center for Family and Youth. Through education, counseling, coaching, and consulting, we empower people to make positive choices, meaningful connections, and transformational change. To learn more, visit thelincolncenter.com.